Hello, in this video I will be talking about the Goal.Activate, how to register an act, and how to make an act actually work out. Okay, I'll also go over the basics over here. So what you're going to do is take your Lua map file. So I'm going to go edit owl father for this case. I'm going to go Yabber M10, creates a folder, open it. You're going to find select the AI file you want. 5060 is our father. I will decompile it. My DSLuaDecompiler, that's in the server. Yeah, you'll find this in the Discord server to the download link and tutorial dependencies. So I'm going to delete the original file, rename the new decrypted file to the normal file. Now you can open it. You do not have to do anything else at this point. The game automatically reads the decrypted and normal encrypted files. So this is fine. Okay, so we're going to take a look at specifically Goal.Activate. So imagine this as a main branch logic for your enemy. Kind of how they pick certain attacks, like if you're far away from Ganitro, he'll choose a bow attack or some sort of long range attack. And if you're close to him, he'll most likely choose a melee attack, because it would be kind of weird if there was no waiting whatsoever. So we're just going to get started and try tackling this so it makes it a little easier for us to read. We're going to go ahead and replace some variables with our own names. So let's do get HP rate. I'm just going to replace this as, so I'm going to Control F this, or Control C and then Control F, find it, and type in replace. I'll just type in goal HP. There's only one instance of that. FromSoft doesn't use that apparently. The distance right here, the distance variable is probably going to be your most important bet because the distance is utilized all the time. So we're going to go ahead and replace all instances of F2 local 5 with an actual name so you can actually see it correctly. So we're going to name it dist. You can name it whatever you want. Just hold it down and now you can read all the instances of when it's used. So these are all the variables that are instantiated, and so they just get certain values that the enemy has. Like get SP is posture, or stamina distance is distance to enemy targets. This is a random number generator. I don't know what this is. I don't know what that is, honestly. Let's see. So these are some statements that instantiates several special effects that the enemy will read in their AI. So this is here because the game does not want to read every single special effect that is on an enemy, because that would be kind of inefficient. So now basically you have to check it here. You can also check it on target enemy. So some of this, I believe this one is a posture break. So now Owl can, so we're editing Owl, we're adding this into the Goal.Activate. So now Owl can, you're able to use this. You're able to see when the player breaks posture with this one argument. Without it, you can't read that attribute. So if you want to add new logic or add your new special effects for the enemy to read, or for the player, or for the enemy to read the player, you would put it here. Let's see. Okay, so I would ignore anything that's kind of weird, like this. I don't know what any of this is, but that's not exactly important. These are just kind of always here. So the system of this is that basically the top, it goes from top to bottom, and it will run until it hits a certain if statement and an end. So at this point, I don't know what any of this is exactly, but if you read up the special effect and read how it exactly works out, you can figure out what this does. But we're gonna go with something simple. Which is simply distance. So this, we're gonna ignore everything above because that's kind of complicated. But if you have a grasp of special effects and other instances like the get number function and all that, you can find out why those are such high priority. Some of those are probably a very special interaction where Owl has to act immediately, or not immediately, but have a high goal to reach for, probably like posture break or something like that. We're gonna go right here. So this is gonna be a little easier. So this is simply reading if the player or enemy is beyond 10 units. Choose these choose these weights. So we're gonna make this a lot easier. So we're gonna take this name, and I would highly recommend you do this. Name it to act. So replace every single instance of this, and this will make a lot more sense now, because basically all of these arrays are being set a number, and that number is the weight. I do not know the exact calculation of the weight. It apparently has a weird calculation, but for the most part, you can kind of proportionally put it. So if one's a 100 and another one's 200, the second one will have double the chance. So let's see. So we're gonna go check it. Else if dist above 10 units. So this will basically set Act 1 to have 0% chance, like no chance whatsoever. Act 3 has 0 chance. Act 4 has 0 chance. You would want to do this if you want to update those numbers. So essentially, if the player is above 10 meters away, don't choose any Act 1, Act 3, Act 4. And I assume, if I remember correctly, Act 1 is a melee attack. So it would be kind of weird for Owl to just sprint towards you very slowly and then start a melee attack. But that could be a very, very real thing, depending on what you want. So if you want Act 1 to be prevalent, you could put 100. Now it's possible that Owl will start walking up to Sekiro and meleeing him at that distance. So I set some acts here. So it's simple. It's quite simple. It's like, okay, so these are the chances. The higher the number, the higher the chance. And then here's this 7. So this 7 also sets some of these to 0, and also sets. You can also set previous values as well. If you want Act 6 to not appear anymore, if they're above 7, you can put 0, but that would be kind of weird. Let's see. Yeah, this keeps going, and then else is basically choosing if all of these fail. So if the player it's really close. If the player fails all of these conditions, the player is below 3 meters, you'll choose all of these acts. And so most likely they set a lot to 0. And if I remember correctly, yeah, all of these 15, Act 11, 12, 15, 17, 11, 12, 15, 17, these are all most likely gap closers or ranged attacks because he's so far away. But as a result of the enemy being close, you will now set all these to 0% chance, because it would be really, really weird if Owl starts a gap closing attack right in front of your face. And instead, all of the melee acts or really close quarter acts have a high chance. So if you want to make your own act, you can put the logic here essentially. Now these are just like, I don't know exactly what this is. I wouldn't mess with it. It's not really relevant unless you're trying to go for some really, really complicated, weird space checks. But so this part right here, you can kind of set cool times for the acts themselves. So you don't want Act 2 to appear many, many times. You could copy a line and then like reformat it. I'm not sure. I've had weird experiences with this. I'm not completely sure how it exactly works, but it might work depending on if you test it enough. So say for example, I want Act 2 to be on cooldown. You would just replace all the numbers preceding Act 2 or Act 1 or whatever you copied and replace it with another number. This is usually the ID of the animation that is first used, and this is usually the time. But I've had kind of weird issues with this, so I wouldn't completely trust it. But here's this right here. So these are all registers. So I wouldn't touch this. I've had weird issues where sometimes it crashes if I change this, but it's pretty easy to see because you have all the registered acts right here. So they're most likely not all enemies use literally every single all 50 acts. That's just FromSoft doesn't use all 50 acts. There's also arbitrarily 50 acts. I have not seen if you can go above 50, but they like to set limits for some random. They like to set a lot of limits. So I would try not to use above 50. So say for example, they usually skip a few. Like 43 doesn't exist. So you would simply copy one of these lines, change the parameters. So just change the 43, then change this to 43. Then boom, it's already a thing. You can write Goal.Act 43, and well, actually, let's just wait for that. So this right here, you have now registered an Act 43. You don't have an Act 43, but you can make one as a result of that. So these are all really complicated. We're not gonna get into the exact numbers, but I'm gonna go ahead and take an act and make it very, very simple. So I'm gonna copy this, take out all the random stuff. Also, you can put these anywhere you want. Like, I usually put it here because if you want to make it custom act, I would just like it near the top of it because it's just easier to remember. But you can always put it at the bottom as well. It doesn't really matter. So if you copy and paste an act, this is not going to work very well. This usually crashes because it uses a lot of the same parameters. Even though those parameters are not supposed to be shared, like these are localized in this one act, so F3 local 0 is only in act 0, 1. So theoretically, you could put act local 0 in this one, but to be sure, I would recommend changing the variable name and change the structure of it. So I'm going to get rid of most of this, honestly, because there's a lot of this is like complicated, utilizes a lot of the previous OWL stuff. But I would recommend having at least these three. So you can name this whatever you want. I would just name this like maybe A43. I don't know, dist 1, because this is kind of a distance calculation for this function right here. I'll explain later, but I will just now start renaming this real quick. I will tell you what I have found functionally, but I do not know what they exactly do because it's just kind of weird how FromSoft uses all this. So now I have to replace all this. Okay, so approach act flex. Don't ignore all the parameters because there's just a lot. Basically, approach act flex is telling the AI to run up to the player at a certain distance and then do something. So this is kind of like a fail-safe. So if you enact a melee act really far away, I will run up and then hit you. If you do not have approach act flex, Owl will just start attacking the air because he's not like actually approaching you. He's just doing the attack straight up. So I'm going to quickly fix this real quick. I'm going to quickly fix this because these use the old parameters. So this is F3 local 6. I'm going to put this as 3. F3 local 5. A lot of these are 0. This is 1.5. It seems like. F3 local 4. 0. A lot of the approach act fluxes are 0 as well, or just weird like constants. And then now, since these are the actual distance calculations, you would replace these. These are quite important. Let's see. For the most part, I don't know which ones exactly correspond to which parameter, but for the most part, if you just change all three of these values to the distance you want for the enemy to start the attack, you can just do that. So if I were to put this as 7, this would be greater than 4.0, obviously, and then for the most part, the enemy will roughly walk towards the player, and then at around 7 meters, they will start their attack. So if we're going to go for melee, we're going to probably 5 because 4.8, because this is a melee act. OWL uses a lot of animations that are melee oriented. You would put it, kind of close, maybe 5 meters or so. Alright, so now we're going to get our first move. So we're going to have to add a sub goal. So we're going to go take a sub goal real quick. That's also complicated. Jeez. Not really complicated. Okay, I'll go over the parameters and such. So tunable spin. So let's just take a look. So this is arg1. Usually in the act system, logic is dictated by arg0. So any like numbers, any RNG numbers is arg0. Arg1, think of it as actual moves, actual like commands to do a move and such. It's different here in the main branch. The main branch has the logic as arg1, so it's kind of like a +1. So you would actually want moves at arg2 here, but you don't ever queue moves in that Goal.Activate system. Okay. So arg1 add subgoal goal common combo attack technical spin. So I'd recommend just copy and pasting a line from there and then changing the parameters because that saves you a lot of time. But I will talk about what all these parameters do. So goal common combo attack technical spin. From my experience, this is basically a combo beginner attack. So this would start like I've only seen it in the beginning as the first attack. Just think of it as combo begin. The 10 here is the number of seconds the enemy will try to do their attack before they just give up and just restart their AI and choose something else. So an instance of this is that sometimes if an AI crashes and it can kind of save itself, it would if something goes wrong here, the AI will wait 10 seconds. Because whenever they crash, they just stand completely still. They will wait 10 seconds, then maybe try restarting the AI. They will go to Goal.Activate, check all their weights, and then choose a different attack. So that's this. So if you want it to be like a really, really quick forget rate, usually you would only want this on like counter attacks and such. You would put it as a low number, but for the most part, you just put 10. Now 3000. This is the animation ID. Pretty simple. Whatever animation ID you want to use, put it here. If you want 3005, you put 3005. And then this is the next thing is the distance. So for this situation, we're just going to do. Oh no, actually the next parameter is just target enemy. Yeah, just to point. This is where you're pointing at or where you're targeting. For the most part, it's going to be the target enemy. Maybe rare instances you want the AI to shoot a certain pillar or something like that. Maybe you can change it with an entity ID, with a bunch of map studio and event communication. But I wouldn't mess with this. And here's the distance. So I'm just gonna remove this part because this is a bit confusing. But basically, get map hit radius is the radius of the actual enemy itself. So if owl was like 200 meters big, actually that wouldn't even work that well. Actually, but basically, get map hit radius is how big owl is. So I think owl is about like 0.7 meters wide in terms of in terms of the game itself. So it's 4.2 minus 0.7, but you can remove this. Let's remove this for now. So this is the distance for the most part. So basically, if the target enemy is above 4.2 meters or whatever calculation, whatever number you put in here, then he will basically stop and choose another act. He will give up the act right now. So if you want moves to always go off, if Sekiro is no matter how far away, you just put 999. So I would do this for debugging and such like this because that'd be very easy to see if like the enemy is doing something. And then after a while, you would probably put like maybe a distance of 5. So like if Sekiro's in the general vicinity, Owl will keep going. Owl will keep attacking, but if Sekiro is far away, he'll just stop. So F3 local 7. These are all just zeros. I have no idea why FromSoft puts these as actual variables, but these are always 0. So this is actually not that bad in terms of memorization. It's literally just what type of attack, how long they remember it, animation ID, the target enemy, and how the distance check essentially. Okay. So I will now add another sub goal. So because you don't want single attacks, so I'm going to add a combo repeat. So combo repeats are going to be your friend because basically it's like a sandwich. Combo repeats. You can add as many combo repeats as you want. Let's see, and you can put a combo final at the end. So it's kind of like a bunch of combo repeats, and then the other bun. So this is the same format. This is the combo repeat, 10-second retention rate, animation ID, target enemy, and here's the distance. So this is 3 minus 0.7 because owl is 0.7 meters wide. So you're gonna just put like, whatever, like 5. Like maybe you want to see if here's 5 meters away or something. Sometimes the parameters here differentiate. I don't know why sometimes the goal common repeat has more zeros. That's a possibility, but for the most part, anything past this is just all zeros. You'll see a common pattern if you work with this a long time that a lot of the end parameters are just 0. So basically, what this is saying right here is you're instantiating a bunch of locals that are these parameters. I cannot tell you for the life of me which one to do, but you can just change all 3 of them, and honestly, it does not affect anything. So roughly, this is Owl's going to walk up around 5 meters close to Sekiro. Then, because approach act flex basically takes all these values and then approaches Sekiro afterwards. So, also, these extra parameters I just took from the previous act, and I've done this before, and it doesn't exactly change too much. I will have to experiment, maybe document that later, but for the most part, you can just put a previous approach act flex and replace the parameters. Okay. So, after, say for example, if Owl is like 10 meters away, and then he chooses act 43, he will calculate and run towards the player until a certain distance. And then now he will start the combo, he will do 3,000, and then if Sekiro is in 5 meters again, he'll do 3,001. So I'm going to end the combo fire. So this just makes it to whereas the combo itself stops. There's nothing wrong. There's no like real no real intricacy. I would say same format. This is an extra 0. I don't know why it's an extra 0. I just don't. Honestly. So let's see. The 999 is he will always do it no matter what. So since I've registered the Act 43 and I've made Act 43 and I've made it like all nice and dandy, we can now put it in the weights. So I'm gonna go ahead and make it to as if Owl is super close, basically all this. I'm gonna go ahead and comment out. I'm gonna go ahead and set all this to 0. So basically, there's no change. I'm just for the sake of the tutorial itself, set all this to 0. I'm doing this in one take, so if it doesn't work, I'll be really, really sad in one take. So I'm going to go ahead and put Act 43, I'm going to name it Act 43, and I'm going to put it like 999. So now has a super, super high chance for it to happen if this if statement runs, essentially. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead, save this, go into my file here. So since I saved that, I'm going to go ahead, this, so now it's saved, start Sekiro, and then hopefully we can see it. Unfortunately, I will have to boot up the entirety of this. I can't cut it without making the video file super huge, so you're going to have to see me slowly get to Owl Father and see if it actually works or not. I'm going to go ahead and turn on debug and such. Okay, he actually works. That's good. If he starts to stand still for forever, that's a clear sign that something's gravely wrong, some sort of misspelling or some sort of issue in the syntax. So I'm going to go ahead and just hold on a second. So I'm super close. Okay, let's not make it counter attack. I'm super close for the most part. Hold on a second. It's being difficult. He's jumping away, causing distance checks to go off. So that's 1, that's 2. Okay, never mind. It's unfortunate. He is not cooperating. Okay, either way. So maybe for the weighting system I did something wrong, but I will check the Act 43 itself. Hold on a second. I will go ahead and tell you how this works. So if you have debug menu, to access the Lua stuff, you would go from game, character, instance, word character man, player log character. Then go to AI, goal, and then the first force act is basically all the acts. The second one is for Kingekis. So those are for counterattacks, but I haven't talked about that in this video. So right now I'm forcing 43, and as you can see, he is actually doing that. So if I run away, he will run up to me, which the running up part is approach act flex. He'll run up, start doing 3000, 3001, 3002. So it actually works, and since it seems like he's attacking quite far away, so you could make him attack closer or farther away by changing the distances in the approach act flex locals, but this looks like it works pretty much fine. Now my question is that I kind of botched up the distance check, it seems like. I think it's because he keeps dashing backwards and getting his own commands afterwards because he keeps dashing backwards, but yeah, it seems there's something else going on with that. I'll quickly go check that and see if I did anything wrong. Oh, I made Act 42. Oh, my. Okay, I made Act 42. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. Go ahead and for that again. And here's another tip. Actually, this all goes full circle. If you exit out of Sekiro and head to the main menu, it actually applies the change. So you do not have to fully quit out of Sekiro in order for the changes to apply. So that's it all works out. So as a result of this should speed up your process a lot because you don't have to open up Sekiro constantly in order to test out a small change. Now, hopefully it works now, and hopefully I don't look like a clown. Oh, wait, no, don't force the attack. Oh, okay. Oh, there it is. Lost the attack. And so, since I'm super close, he's choosing it a bunch of times, and there's no cooldown or something like that. So it's not 100% obviously. Sometimes I will calculate if you're behind him, and if you're behind him, he'll dash away. So that's an actual other thing. But if you're in front of him, for the most part, he'll probably choose Act 43 again. Yep, there it is. So you can mess with this a lot. You can change a bunch of acts. Like if you don't want a certain attack, literally just comment it out or set it to 0. If you really want an attack, just set it to 99 or such like that. Yeah, these are the space checks. I was probably behind him, and he started realizing that I shouldn't be here, so he started to kick away, jump around, and such. Yeah, that should be it for this video. Basically talking about how the weighting system works. I only talked about distances specifically because it's easier, and for the most part, you're actually going to be working with this if you're trying to do this. But for the other stuff, so if you want a super high priority logic, like say for example, if some dumb reason, if Sekiro is using an umbrella and you want to check that, so you would basically add a observable special effect here. So Owl can observe if Sekiro is having the umbrella special effect ID. Then you would check if Sekiro has the umbrella effect ID right here, and then set that act just super high for him to do something about it, essentially. But for the most part, it goes top to bottom, but bottom acts can also set previous acts to 0. But it will basically run all of this code. It will put all of these numbers in order. So Act 1 is 0 at this point, but then at the end originally it put Act 1 at a different number. So whenever Goal.Activate activates, and if you're far away, it will stop here. None of these will go off, and then he'll choose the appropriate acts and such. But you can experiment with this. I would say for example, Control F, search out what this does. Then you can see if this happens, and choose which act that. And at that point, this will end, and it will continue reading everything else down here. I've also talked about how to register an act. Simply just added a parameter and such. I haven't tested this. This has kind of gone into gray areas, but you can try adding your own parameters similar to how I made another instance of this. You can copy and paste a lot of values and make it work yet again. After a while, you get a hang of which values are 0, which values are what. I did talk about the parameters specifically here, so you don't have to worry about that, which is good. But if the 4 zeros don't do anything, I don't know why they're even there. But yeah, that should be it for this video. I'll talk about Kengekis, which are basically counterattacks later. Maybe interrupts. I think I've actually went over interrupts in the previous video, which is kind of weird because acts are a little more important because they're like normal. You know, that's usually how enemies work. Kengekis are kind of special for Sekiro because they're counterattacks for blocking and such, and they're a bit different than how the other ones are set up. But this is how that'll be it. All right. Bye bye. See ya.